Welcome back. This is All Angles here on ENCA. So we sort of hit the ground running really at the start of the show. I didn't tell you what's coming up within the next 2 hours. And that was because of what was happening at the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. One of the key events that we are watching is that visit by President Cyril Ramaphosa to that Toyota plant in Durban. There's a new car, a vehicle that Toyota will be producing. It's called the Toyota Cross, and it's a hybrid vehicle. It will not only be sold locally, but also will be for the export market, I believe, to some 40 different countries. It's one story that's part of a bigger puzzle that talks about confidence and investment in our country, given our challenges in the economy, but also what happened in July, to what extent investor confidence was shaken. So President Ramaphosa is overseeing all of that. And of course, our reporters, it's just 6 days to go before election day, and our reporters, fend out really across the country, giving you a sense and a flavor of the last few days of campaigning, but also the voices of ordinary South Africans, what it is that they are looking forward to ahead of voting day. So that's part of what we are covering for the next 2 hours. In fact, throughout the day here on ENCA. But let me take you back to our lead story now, and it's out of the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Well, that court has dismissed former President Jacob Zuma's application to have the state lead prosecutor, Advocate Billy Downer, removed from his corruption trial. Zuma claimed Downer is biased and does not have the title to prosecute him in his arms deal corruption case. He also recently laid complaints against the prosecutor for allegedly leaking his health information. Well, let's dig into this thing then. I'm joined by legal expert Nthabiseng Dubazana. Thank you so much for your time. And Nthabiseng, as always, is anyone surprised it went in this way?
No, I don't think anyone is surprised. It would have been a surprise if it didn't go the way that it had. I suppose what we can now expect is a possibility of an appeal of the judgment. We can expect that the criminal charges will officially be laid in the sense that Billy Downer will now officially be charged, and then we can see how it unfolds from there. I actually thought that by the time this matter was heard, in other words, when the Judge Kuhn gave his judgment, then the official criminal charges would have been laid to the prosecutor, Ndete Downer. But clearly it hasn't. Otherwise, I would assume that Ndete Kuhn would have decided that, you know what, seeing as there's a pending criminal charge against you, then let us have you removed as a result of that. So clearly he hasn't officially been charged in that the IO has approached him and said that these are the charges leveled against you as yet. It means the NPA hasn't decided exactly on whether or not to proceed with the matter. Now, when you look at what happened today, I find it very interesting that Judge Kuhn said that had the application been accompanied with a further application that the prosecutor be removed on top of the 106 appeal, then probably he would have considered it. But because it was strictly on the 106 application, therefore it falls short. That was very interesting.
Yeah, to talk to me a bit more about that, Nthabiseng, because part of what happened after the initial filing of documents by Mr. Zuma's legal representatives, it seems that when they were now arguing the case, Advocate Dalimpofu, they sort of tried to clarify what they were going for, and basically saying that it's not just Billy Downer who doesn't have title to prosecute, it's the entirety of the NPA that has behaved in a manner that basically strips them of title to prosecute. To be honest with you, I was left behind, I must admit, in those arguments there. So what's the distinction there that Judge Kuhn was making, that there should have been a separate application for Billy Downer's removal in addition to the special plea, section 1061H?
Yes. So what he was saying is that the section 106H basically says that, the way that the accused had used it in this matter was that he lacks title. That's why he went so in depth in what title means, which he decided that the title means the locus standi of the prosecutor to proceed with the matter. He then went on to say that if we're to take the application in which the accused had used the blanket approach, that is, then it would mean that all prosecutors, private and part of the NPA, most surely would lack title. to proceed with such matters. Now, after having dealt with that issue, he then went to say that seeing as 1061H does not cover the issue of bias and showing not being objective and all of that, he then said it should have been, if it had been accompanied with a separate application over and above the special plea, then it would have been looking into specifically Ndete Downer himself and his behavior and his attitude, and therefore he would be forced to then consider that and see whether it is applicable. And then he said he can't even extend the definition of title to mean what Ndete Zuma and his legal team were trying to say in their papers, that it should cover bias, it should cover all of these things, because there's enough legislation that protects the accused in that dimension.
So it would seem that the argument says Mr. Zuma's legal team were using the wrong instrument to try and get the objectives that they wanted. And the last part that I want to tease out with you, Ntabiseng, has to do with exactly that, the safeguards that we are told are there in any case in the legal system in the country, that, you may say that this prosecutor is biased, lacks independence, etc., has a vested interest, but it is the system as a whole that protects your fair trial rights. It's nothing new, is it? Because it was said in that Porritt case around this particular, a similar application that had been lodged, but Judge Kuhn again emphasizing it today.
100%, and the biggest one that protects the rights of the accused is Section 35 of the Constitution. There has been numerous case law that protects the rights of the accused, just based solely on Section 35. And also the Criminal Procedure Act has also numerous sections that are used to protect the rights of the accused. So there are various aspects or various ways in which, the accused can nitpick to choose how to protect himself as the trial proceeds. But in my opinion, the biggest one will always be Section 35, because of the way that constitutional courts have dealt with the rights of the accused and how they should be protected. As 90% of the time, at least in the past, they weren't as protected as they were now. So there had to be a lot of interpretation on the rights of the accused, weighed against, of course, Section 36 of the Constitution.
Lastly, Ntabiseng, the date that is set now is the 11th of April for this trial to get underway in earnest, possibly call the first witness. If we were to call that the main highway and the potential, appeal against today's decision, perhaps an off-ramp into which, a sidecar coming out of the main car we are in will drive onto that off-ramp and perhaps rejoin a bit later on. Does the car on the main highway, which is the main case, the corruption case, all of those charges, does it continue moving while the side car takes the off-ramp, or, procedurally, does everything stop while we all get onto this off-ramp and perhaps get back onto the main highway later on?
I think that answer has a yes and no. The main car will continue going onto the main highway to April 11th, 2022, right? But then we have the off-ramp that deals with the appeal. We have the off-ramp that deals with the criminal charge that's also being laid against, which might derail the main road right here that's going to April 2022, depending on how both of these off-ramps work out. But if they get dismissed and everything is fine, then both cars will merge with the main road and we go to April 2022. But if one of these two off-ramps succeeds, then the road 2022 will have to stop, and then there have to be a wheel change, an engine change or whatever to get the road back onto April 2022.
All right, I've got to thank you for that, Ntabiseng Dubazana. They're always generous with your time and your insights, and we appreciate it here on All Angles, weighing in on what has come out from the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. I was just trying to find a way, an analogy that sort of works to, help us all keep track of where we are. There have been so many cases. There was the spy tapes matter that went all the way to the SCA. There was the application for a permanent stay of prosecution. Then there was the special plea that has now been dismissed. And then there's actually the main trial in the Zuma matter. So sometimes it's hard to keep track of what's what.